I realized my husband wanted to kill me the night he locked our bedroom door from the outside. But what terrified me even more was discovering my mother-in-law had murdered my parents 20 years earlier, and my entire marriage had been a trap to steal my inheritance. We were sitting in the kitchen. The clock read almost midnight. I had just returned from my lawyer's office after signing the final paperwork related to my grandfather's inheritance trust. Ethan sat across from me, slowly swirling a glass of whiskey, his voice so calm it sent chills down my spine. "Are you still allergic to Zolpidem?" I remember laughing because the question felt so random. "Why are you asking?" Ethan shrugged. "Just curious." But his eyes weren't curious at all. They looked like someone checking whether a gun was still loaded. At the time, I didn't understand. It wasn't until 3 weeks later that I realized that same night he had been sitting with his mother, planning how to kill me. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 32 years old, living in Connecticut, and I work as an interior architect. I had been married to Ethan Walker for nearly 6 years. From the outside, our marriage looked like the perfect upper-middle-class American dream. Beautiful house, expensive cars, charming husband, wealthy mother-in-law well known in the local charity scene. But behind closed doors, I spent 6 years being psychologically manipulated until I almost lost myself completely. My mother-in-law, Patricia Walker, was the kind of woman everyone believed was perfect. She always smiled at the right moments, spoke softly, donated to church every month, and hosted charity events for children with cancer. But at home, she was a monster wearing human skin. "Claire, you should lose weight. Ethan prefers elegant women." "Claire, that dress makes your hips look enormous." "Claire, you know without the Walker family backing you, you'd be nothing in this town." She never screamed, never hit me. She destroyed me slowly with words sweet as honey. And Ethan always stood there watching. That was the part that hurt the most. He never defended me, not once. One time, Patricia deliberately spilled red wine on my white dress in front of guests, then laughed and said, "Oh my God, Claire is so clumsy." And Ethan laughed with everyone else. That night, I cried in the bathroom for almost an hour. He didn't even ask if I was okay. But I stayed. Sounds stupid, right? I thought I loved him. Or maybe I loved the version of Ethan I imagined when we first met. The man who once drove 3 hours in the middle of the night just to bring me cold medicine. The man who talked about building a family with me. The man who used to hold me and whisper, "I'll always protect you." Turns out that was just a performance. Everything changed after my grandfather died. He was the only person in my family who truly loved me. My parents died in a car accident when I was 10, and I grew up with my grandparents in Boston. My grandfather built Donovan Holdings, a massive real estate company. When he passed away, I inherited nearly $12 million along with shares in the company. And suddenly, the Walker family changed. Patricia started calling me daughter. Ethan began taking me on vacations, buying flowers, cooking dinner. After 6 years of emotional distance, he suddenly transformed into the perfect husband. At first, I was foolish enough to think maybe things were finally getting better. Then I overheard that conversation. That night, I came home earlier than expected because my meeting had been canceled. As I walked into the garage, I heard Patricia's voice from the kitchen. She was speaking quietly, but the back door was slightly open. "You need to do it before she changes the will." I froze. Ethan replied, "I know." The Tahoe trip would be best. Boating accidents happen all the time. I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice. Ethan went silent for a few seconds before saying the sentence that shattered my entire life. "I already checked her medication. If I increase the dosage a little, she'll sleep deeply." Patricia laughed softly. "My son is so smart." I don't remember how long I stood there, maybe a few seconds, maybe forever. I only remember the overwhelming nausea. The man I slept beside every night was planning my murder with his mother. I backed away slowly and returned to my car without making a sound. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. I sat in a Walmart parking lot for almost 2 hours like a ghost. The scariest part wasn't that they wanted me dead. It was that suddenly, everything started making sense. The times Ethan insisted on making my drinks himself. The mornings I woke up feeling strangely drugged. The moments Patricia joked that, if Claire dies young, Ethan will become a very rich widower. The way Ethan constantly asked detailed questions about my inheritance contracts. Every piece suddenly formed a horrifying picture. I almost called the police. Then I hung up. I had no proof, just a conversation I overheard. And if I accused them too early, Ethan would know I had discovered everything. I had no idea what they might do next. So I went back home. I still remember the disgust I felt walking into the kitchen and seeing Ethan smile at me like nothing had happened. "You're home early," he said. I looked at that man, and for the first time in my life, I was truly afraid. I forced myself to sound normal. "Yeah, the meeting got canceled." Patricia walked over and hugged me. I nearly threw up when I smelled the familiar scent of her Chanel perfume. "Sweetheart," she said warmly, "I was just telling Ethan we should have a family dinner this weekend." I looked at her. A woman who had been discussing my murder 10 minutes earlier was now stroking my hair like a loving mother. That night, I pretended to have a headache so I could avoid dinner. When Ethan fell asleep, I took his phone. I knew the password. Our wedding date. How ironic. I checked his messages. At first, there was nothing unusual besides work emails and texts from friends. Then I noticed a contact saved simply as M. I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped. "Ethan, do you think she's getting suspicious?" M. "No, she's stupid." "Ethan, I'll handle it in Tahoe." M. "Make sure there's no evidence this time." This time. I reread those words at least 20 times. This time meant there had been another time. My hands went ice cold. I scrolled upward through older messages, but almost everything had been deleted. Only one fragment remained. "Man, don't go soft like you did with Allison." Allison. Ethan's ex-girlfriend. The woman who died 7 years ago in a car accident. Everyone said she lost control driving in the rain. I had attended her funeral with Ethan when we first started dating. He cried like his entire world had collapsed. Oh, God. I slowly lifted my eyes toward the man sleeping beside me, and for the first time, I wondered, was Allison really an accident? I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Ethan, staring at the ceiling until sunrise, with only one thought repeating in my head. If Allison wasn't an accident, then I was next. Around 5 in the morning, Ethan woke up. He wrapped an arm around my waist like he always did, his lips brushing softly against my shoulder. "You're awake early," he murmured. I had to use every ounce of strength not to recoil in disgust. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." Ethan stroked my hair, his voice so gentle it terrified me. "You need more rest. You've been stressed lately." I looked at his face from only inches away and realized the most horrifying thing about skilled manipulators. They don't look like monsters. They look perfectly normal. After Ethan left for work, I locked myself in the bathroom and vomited for nearly 10 minutes. I didn't know what to do. If I ran immediately, Ethan would know I had discovered the plan. If I stayed, I might die. Finally, I called the only person I still trusted, Daniel Harper. Daniel had been my grandfather's personal attorney for over 20 years. He was around 50, and after my grandfather died, he handled my entire inheritance. I called him through FaceTime because I was terrified someone might be listening. "Claire?" Daniel frowned the moment he saw my face. "Jesus Christ, are you okay?" I burst into tears instantly. I told him everything, the conversation in the kitchen, the messages about Allison. Daniel stayed silent for a very long time after I finished. Finally, he said something that made my blood run cold. "Claire, there's something I never told you." I wiped my eyes. "What?" "3 months ago, Ethan contacted me asking about the inheritance terms if you died." My heart skipped a beat. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because he said the two of you were discussing long-term financial planning." I thought it was odd, but not this odd. Daniel lowered his voice. "Claire, you need to leave that house immediately." But I shook my head. "If I disappear suddenly, they'll know I overheard everything. So what are you going to do?" I stared directly into the screen. "I want the truth about Allison." Daniel sighed like he had expected that answer. "I'll hire someone to investigate." The next 3 days were the worst of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to smile at Ethan, eat dinner with Patricia, let her hug me, sleep beside a man who might be waiting for the perfect moment to kill me. I started paying attention to everything. Ethan controlled my food and drinks far more than I had ever realized. "Let me make your smoothie. I'll get your headache medicine. You should have some wine and relax." Before, I thought it was caring. Now it felt dangerous. I secretly replaced every pill in our bedroom with vitamins that looked identical. I poured out anything Ethan handed me whenever he wasn't looking. I even bought a tiny hidden camera for the living room through Amazon. Then the first thing happened. I woke up around 3 in the morning because I heard the bedroom door open. Ethan thought I was asleep. He moved quietly. I cracked my eyes open just enough to see his silhouette standing beside my nightstand. He opened the medicine drawer. My heart nearly exploded in my chest. Ethan pulled something from his pocket and emptied it into my sleeping pills. Then he stood there staring at me for several seconds. I will never forget that expression. Not love, not concern. Calculation. Like someone looking at something that would soon belong to them. When he climbed back into bed, I bit my lip so hard it bled just to stay calm. The next morning, I took every pill to be tested. The results came back that afternoon. There was a low-dose sedative mixed into the medication. I sat frozen in my car outside the clinic for almost 30 minutes. There was no doubt anymore. They truly wanted me dead. But it didn't stop there. 2 days later, Daniel called me again. "Claire, we found a few things about Allison." His voice sounded strange. "The police concluded she lost control of the car during heavy rain, but there was one unusual detail." "I'm listening." "The brakes failed." I tightened my grip on the phone. "How?" "The brake line had been cut." The blood inside me turned to ice. "The police didn't notice?" "They did, but the report suggested it might have been mechanical damage." "Did they investigate Ethan?" Daniel went silent for a few seconds. "Yes." I could barely breathe. "And?" "He had an alibi." I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. Part of me still wanted to believe Ethan was innocent, wanted to believe this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But then Daniel spoke again. "Claire, there's something else. I don't think I can handle anything more. 3 weeks ago, Patricia increased your life insurance policy to $5 million. I jerked upright. What? Ethan is the sole beneficiary. I started laughing, not because it was funny, because it was the kind of laugh people make when they realize their entire life has become a sick joke. I drove to a motel nearly an hour away and sat alone in the dark until morning. For the first time, I seriously considered disappearing. But then another thought entered my mind. If I ran, they would win. Patricia would continue pretending to be a respected charity queen. Ethan would continue acting like the grieving husband. And Allison might never get justice. No, I wanted to destroy them. So I started making a plan. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator named Marcus Reed, former FBI. Daniel recommended him. Marcus met me at a small diner outside the city. He was around 60 years old, gray-haired, with eyes sharp enough to cut glass. After listening to my entire story, he stared at me for a long moment before asking, "Are you sure you want to see this through?" "I want the truth." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then prepare yourself. What you find may be worse than you think." He was right. A week later, Marcus sent me the first file. Inside were photos of Ethan meeting a man named Victor Hale at a private marina in northern Connecticut. Victor Hale had previously been investigated for staging fatal accidents to collect insurance money. A chill crawled down my spine as I read the report. Marcus uncovered another detail. Patricia had transferred $50,000 to Victor 6 months earlier. My hands shook uncontrollably as I stared at the laptop screen. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was a calculated murder conspiracy. But the real shock came the following evening. I was sitting in the living room pretending to watch television when Patricia suddenly sat down beside me. She smiled softly. "You know, Claire, I've always considered you my own daughter." I had to fight the urge to slap her. "Of course." Patricia studied me for a few seconds, then rested a hand on my knee. "But there's something I've always wondered." "What is it?" "If one day you died, do you think Ethan would remarry?" The air in the room froze. I looked directly into her eyes, and for the first time, I saw what truly existed beneath the mask of the perfect, elegant woman. Cruelty, pure and cold. I forced a weak smile. "I think he'd be devastated." Patricia smiled. "Men recover much faster than women." Then she stood up and walked into the kitchen as if she hadn't just threatened my life. That night, I locked the bedroom door for the first time since our wedding. Around 2 a.m, the doorknob began to turn. Slowly, again and again. Someone was trying to get in from the outside. I shot upright the moment the doorknob rattled for the 3rd time. The room was completely dark except for the faint yellow glow from the backyard filtering through the curtains. The slow metallic twisting sound sent ice through my entire body. "Claire?" Ethan's voice came from outside the door. "Why is the door locked?" I forced myself to breathe evenly. I couldn't sleep. A few seconds of silence, then the doorknob turned again. "Open the door." I looked around the room like a trapped animal. My phone was beside my pillow, already prepared with the emergency call button open. "I'm changing," I lied. More silence. Then Ethan let out a soft laugh. "You're acting strange." Footsteps retreated down the hallway, but I didn't sleep again. I sat against the headboard until sunrise with a kitchen knife hidden beneath the blanket. The next morning, Ethan behaved as if nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek before leaving for work and smiled. "This weekend in Tahoe is going to be fun. You need to relax." Tahoe, the trip where they planned to kill me. I forced a fake smile. "I think so too." The second Ethan left, I called Marcus. "I think they're going to move sooner than planned." "I think so too," he replied. "You don't have much time." "Did you find anything else?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Yes, but you should sit down first." My heart pounded. I'm already sitting. "Victor Hale isn't the only person Ethan has been meeting." "What do you mean?" "I followed him last night." Ethan went to a private clinic in New Haven. A clinic? One that specializes in handling death certificates and medical records for unexplained deaths. My stomach twisted violently. Marcus continued. Claire, I think they've already prepared everything. I sat there frozen. I used to watch true crime documentaries on Netflix and wonder how victims failed to realize the danger sooner. Now I understood. Because when the person trying to kill you is the person you love most, your brain fights reality until the very last second. But I couldn't deny it anymore. Marcus told me to transfer all my money into a separate account and prepare to leave at any moment. I did exactly that. That evening, while Ethan was showering, I sneaked into his office. His laptop was already open. Huge mistake. I checked his emails first, but found nothing besides work messages. Then I discovered a hidden folder on the hard drive. There was a file named Tahoe. My hands started shaking. I clicked it open. Inside were scanned copies of my life insurance policy, the trip itinerary, information about a private boat rental, and a notes file. I opened it. Disappear on lake. Body not recovered. Assets transferred after 30 days. Patricia handles media. I felt like someone was crushing my throat. This wasn't some vague fantasy anymore. They had planned every step. But the thing that nearly drove me insane was written at the bottom of the file. Mom, remember to handle the boathouse camera footage like Allison. The blood roared in my ears so loudly I couldn't hear anything else. Allison. Jesus Christ. They really killed her. I could barely stand when I heard the shower water stop running. I quickly photographed every file with my phone and rushed back to the bedroom, just as Ethan walked out of the bathroom. He stared at me for a few seconds. You okay? Yeah, I forced a smile. Just tired. Ethan stepped closer and wrapped his arms around me from behind. My whole body stiffened. I love you, Claire. I closed my eyes. A murderer was whispering those words into my ear. I love you too. That night, I sent every file to Marcus and Daniel. 30 minutes later, Marcus called me back. Claire, you need to leave the house immediately. I can't. If I disappear now, listen to me. His voice hardened. Victor Hale just arrived at your house. My heart nearly stopped. I can see him from my car. He didn't go through the front entrance. He went toward the back garage. I could barely breathe. What do I do? Don't let them know you know anything, but do not eat or drink a single thing they give you. I'm contacting federal law enforcement through an old connection. Do we have enough evidence yet? Not enough for attempted murder charges. So I just keep acting like bait? Marcus didn't answer immediately. That was the answer. That night, Patricia cooked dinner. She made my favorite lasagna. The horrifying part was that I used to think it meant she was finally starting to like me. Now, all I could do was stare at the plate and wonder what might be inside it. Patricia smiled warmly. Claire, you're barely eating. I'm not hungry. Ethan watched me carefully. You've been acting strange lately. I shrugged. Work stress. Patricia rested her chin on her hand and studied me for several seconds before saying something that sent a chill through my spine. You know, sometimes people die simply from too much stress. The room went silent. Ethan glanced at his mother like even he thought she had gone too far, but Patricia only smiled. And suddenly I understood. She enjoyed this. She enjoyed controlling people, enjoyed watching me suffer in silence. This was a game to her, and I was the prey. Around 1 a.m, I received a text message from an unknown number. She knows about Allison. No name, just that single sentence. My heart slammed against my ribs. I immediately called Marcus. I didn't send that, he said instantly. Then who did? I don't know. But if Ethan received the same message, you're in real danger now. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, steady, coming toward my bedroom. I immediately turned off my phone screen. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Then came 3 soft knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Claire? Ethan called quietly. Are you awake? I didn't answer. A long silence followed. Then his voice changed completely. No warmth, no softness. Cold, empty. You know something, don't you? I felt all the blood drain from my body. The doorknob started shaking violently. Not gently this time. He was actually trying to force the door open. Claire. Ethan's voice was low and dangerous now. Open the door. I backed away from the bed, shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Then the screen lit up. Marcus was video calling. I answered instantly without thinking. Marcus's face appeared in the darkness. Claire, get to the window now. The police are on their way. At that exact moment, the bedroom door shook violently from a powerful kick on the other side. For the first time since I had known him, Ethan screamed, "Open the damn door!" The second kick made the entire doorframe shake violently. I ran toward the window exactly as Marcus shouted through the phone. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely unlock it. "Hurry!" Marcus yelled. "Victor is inside the house." I froze. Victor Hale was inside my house. A loud crash exploded somewhere in the hallway, like something had just shattered. Ethan started screaming outside the bedroom door. I had never heard him lose control like that before. "Claire, open the door, now!" I climbed onto the windowsill just as the bedroom door burst inward. The sound of splintering wood made me scream. Ethan stood in the doorway, but he wasn't the man I had married anymore. His eyes were bloodshot, his face twisted with rage, and in his hand was a hammer. I will never forget that moment, because every final illusion inside me died right there. He was really going to kill me. "Claire!" I jumped out the window. Luckily, the bedroom was only above a low porch roof. I crashed into the bushes below, pain shooting through my ankle, but adrenaline kept me moving. I heard Ethan shouting above me, "Get her!" Then I saw another figure burst out from the garage. Victor. He was huge, wearing a black jacket, sprinting straight toward me. I had never run so fast in my life. I tore across the backyard, my ankle burning like it was broken, tears streaming into the cold wind. I could hear Victor getting closer behind me. Then bright headlights flooded the yard. Police sirens screamed through the night. Victor stopped instantly. 2 black SUVs slammed to a halt outside the gate. Marcus jumped out first alongside 2 other men. Victor turned and ran. Everything after that happened fast. Shouting, footsteps pounding, someone slamming hard against a car, Patricia screaming inside the house. I collapsed onto the grass, shaking uncontrollably. Marcus rushed over and grabbed my shoulders. "You're safe now." But he was wrong, because the real nightmare had only just begun. The local police arrived about 10 minutes later. By then, Ethan had completely regained control of himself. The most terrifying thing about sociopaths is how quickly they can switch emotions on and off. He walked out of the house looking perfectly panicked. "Claire!" Ethan rushed toward me like a worried husband. "Oh my God, are you okay?" I immediately backed away. Ethan looked at the police, then at me, his eyes filled with perfectly rehearsed pain. "She's having some kind of breakdown," he said softly. "Claire's been under severe stress lately." I almost laughed from disgust. Patricia appeared moments later wearing a cream-colored robe, tears pouring down her face like a Hollywood actress. "What is happening?" she cried. "Why was Claire climbing out the window?" Marcus stepped forward. "Someone attempted a break-in." By then, Victor had disappeared. I saw Ethan's expression flicker for half a second. Just half a second. But I knew exactly what he was doing. Calculating. The police searched the property but found no trace of Victor. Ethan claimed I'd probably panicked after a nightmare. Patricia even hugged me in front of the officers like a heartbroken mother. She's been taking so many anxiety medications lately. I instantly understood what they were doing. They were trying to make me look insane, and worse, it was almost working. No direct evidence, no footage of Victor, no recording of the murder plan, only my word. A millionaire heiress under stress, unable to sleep, convinced her husband and mother-in-law wanted to kill her. It sounded crazy. After the police left, Ethan walked into my bedroom as though he hadn't smashed down the door with a hammer an hour earlier. He sat at the edge of the bed, wearing the perfect expression of heartbreak. "You really think I'd hurt you?" I stared at the shattered door behind him. "You had a hammer." Ethan sighed heavily. "I broke the door because you wouldn't answer. I thought you were trying to hurt yourself." I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from screaming at him. "And Victor?" "Victor's the mechanic handling the boat in Tahoe. I asked him to pick up the garage keys." Everything had an explanation. Every single thing. And suddenly I realized the terrifying truth. This wasn't their first time doing this. They were too good at it. Marcus refused to let me stay at the house that night. He moved me into a hidden apartment outside New Haven. For the first time in weeks, I slept more than 2 hours. But the next morning, I woke up to over 30 missed calls. All from Ethan. The final text message made my blood run cold. "You're destroying our family over sick delusions." 1 minute later, another message arrived. "Come home, Claire. I still want to save our marriage." Save. Jesus Christ. I blocked his number. Then Daniel called. His voice sounded tense. "Claire, something big just happened." "I'm guessing today still wasn't bad enough?" "Ethan just filed an emergency psychiatric evaluation request against you." I shot upright. "He did what?" "He claims you're suffering from paranoid psychosis after your grandfather's death." My blood turned to ice. In America, if your family convinces authorities that you're a danger to yourself, they can temporarily force you into psychiatric evaluation. And if that happened, I would be isolated. No one would believe me anymore. I looked at Marcus standing beside the window. They're trying to lock me away. Marcus nodded slowly. And if you're declared mentally incompetent, Ethan gains temporary control over your assets. The entire room started spinning. That was the real plan, not just killing me, destroying my credibility first if necessary. Patricia had spent months telling friends I was emotionally fragile. Ethan had told neighbors I was prone to panic attacks. A few months earlier, he had even encouraged me to seek therapy for depression. They had been building the image of me as mentally unstable for a long time, piece by piece. I sat down slowly, my hands ice cold. What do we do? Marcus stared at me for a long moment before answering. We need them to make a mistake. I don't think they make mistakes. Yes, Marcus said quietly. People who think they're untouchable always make mistakes. And he was right, because later that night, Patricia Walker got drunk. And for the first time in years, she talked too much. I had never seen Patricia lose control before. She was terrifyingly perfect, always knowing exactly what to say, when to smile, how to cry. Patricia Walker was the kind of woman who could attend a funeral in the morning and appear at a charity gala that same evening with the soft smile of an angel. But that night, she was drunk. And drunk people forget to wear their masks. Marcus had paid a bartender at the country club Patricia frequented. Around 11 that night, he called me. You need to hear this. He played the recording. Soft jazz in the background, glasses clinking. Then Patricia's voice, slightly slurred. I swear that girl is a parasite. Another woman laughed quietly. You mean Claire? Who else? Patricia scoffed. She never deserved the Walker family. But Ethan loves her. Patricia went silent for a moment before bursting into laughter. Oh, honey, Ethan only loves her money. My stomach twisted violently. The other woman lowered her voice. Patricia, you think my son married that orphaned Donovan girl for love? Then she said the sentence that stopped my heart. I told Ethan to pursue her from the beginning. Everything around me disappeared. Marcus looked at me but said nothing. In the recording, the other woman sounded genuinely shocked. Wait, what do you mean? After Allison failed, we needed another target. I couldn't breathe. Allison failed? Not an accident, not a tragedy. A failure. Patricia kept laughing, drunk and smug. The Donovan girl was much easier. She's always been desperate for love. All it took was a handsome man pretending to care. I burst into tears right there. Not from fear anymore, from humiliation. 6 years of my life had been a trap. Marcus stopped the recording. This isn't enough to charge them with murder, he said quietly, but it's enough to destroy their image. I wiped my face. I want more than that. I know. The next morning, Daniel called with more bad news. Claire, we have a problem. I'm starting to hate that sentence. Patricia contacted several members of the Donovan Holdings board. My chest tightened. Why? She told them you've become mentally unstable and Ethan may need to temporarily manage your assets. I laughed bitterly. Incredible. They haven't even killed me yet and they're already dividing the money. But Daniel didn't laugh. Claire, some people believe them. That hurt more than I expected. I always thought that if something like this happened, people would immediately see the truth. But no, because Ethan and Patricia were very good at what they did. They were the kind of people others wanted to trust. And me? I was the woman hiding from her husband while claiming he was trying to murder her. It sounded insane. That afternoon, Marcus showed me something he'd recovered from security cameras near my house. The footage was blurry, but clear enough to show Victor Hale entering the garage the night I jumped from the window. More importantly, 10 minutes later, Ethan walked outside and spoke to him. There was no audio, but then Ethan handed Victor a thick envelope. Money. Marcus slowed the footage down. Look closely at Ethan's hand. I leaned toward the screen. There was a small tattoo on his wrist, a triangle symbol. Marcus opened another image, an old photograph from Allison's crash scene. In the reflection of the shattered windshield stood a man in the distance, and he had the exact same tattoo. A cold chill crawled down my spine. It's Ethan. Marcus nodded slowly. He was at the scene the night Allison died. But he had an alibi. Marcus gave a grim smile. An alibi confirmed by his mother. I leaned back into the chair. Everything was finally coming together. Allison died. Ethan cried and played the grieving boyfriend. Nobody suspected him. Then a few years later, he met me, a lonely woman who had inherited a fortune. I felt so disgusted I wanted to peel my own skin off. That night, Ethan showed up outside the apartment where I was hiding. I watched him through the hallway security camera. He stood outside my door for almost 2 hours. No pounding, no yelling, just standing there. That was somehow even more terrifying. Eventually, he sent a text. I know you're in there. I didn't answer. Another message appeared. Claire, let's talk. Then another. Who are you listening to? Marcus? Daniel? They just want your money. I laughed bitterly. Classic Ethan. The moment he lost control over me, he tried isolating me from the people helping me. The final text arrived close to midnight, and it sent ice through my entire body. You know, Claire, Allison ran away too. I stared at the screen. He had just admitted it. Indirectly, but still an admission. Marcus immediately saved the message. He's starting to lose control, he said quietly. But the most horrifying thing happened the next morning. I was drinking coffee when the television inside the apartment switched to a local news broadcast. The anchor said, "Today, Connecticut police confirmed they are investigating the disappearance of businesswoman Claire Donovan Walker." I froze. The screen changed to my wedding photo with Ethan. Then footage of Ethan standing outside our house, wearing the perfect expression of grief. "I just want my wife to come home safely," he said emotionally to the cameras. "Claire has been suffering from a severe mental health crisis. I'm terrified she may hurt herself." I nearly threw my coffee mug at the television. He was turning me into the crazy wife who ran away from home. Patricia stood beside him, tears filling her eyes. Claire is like a daughter to me. Jesus Christ. I sat there numb as the news continued. The Walker family has announced a $50,000 reward for any information regarding Claire's whereabouts. Marcus turned the television off. That's the next step. I know. My voice shook with rage. They're shaping public opinion first. And if you end up dead a few days from now, Marcus looked directly at me. People will believe it was suicide. The room fell silent. Then Marcus's phone rang. He answered for a few seconds before his expression completely changed. You're sure? My heart started pounding. Marcus slowly lowered the phone. Victor Hale is dead. I stood up instantly. What? Car accident. The blood inside me turned to ice. No, that couldn't be a coincidence. Marcus stared directly at me. Claire, they're cleaning up every loose end. I couldn't speak for nearly a full minute after hearing Victor was dead. Marcus opened his laptop and showed me crime scene photos that had just been sent by a contact inside the police department. Victor's SUV had been crushed beneath an overpass north of New Haven. The preliminary report claimed he lost control on wet roads after the rain. I stared at the screen and started laughing. A dry, hollow, almost insane laugh. Of course, I whispered. Another accident. Marcus didn't answer. He understood exactly what it meant too. Victor was the only link outside of Ethan and Patricia, and now he was dead, just as police attention started turning toward him. Too perfect. Too clean. I looked up at Marcus. They'll kill anyone. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes. For the first time, I truly understood what kind of people I was dealing with. Not just greedy opportunists. Predators. People who had done this before. People cold enough to murder someone and attend a charity fundraiser the next day. I started shaking uncontrollably. Marcus pulled a chair across from me and sat down. Claire, listen to me. The most important thing right now is that you stay alive. I don't want to just survive. I clenched my fists. I want them to pay. And to make them pay, you need to live long enough to do it. I fell silent. Then Marcus slid a thick file toward me. There's something you need to see. Inside were Patricia Walker's financial records. At first, I didn't understand what Marcus was pointing at. Then I noticed dozens of secret transfers spread over 15 years. Every payment connected to men with histories of insurance fraud, staged accidents, or sudden disappearances after receiving money. I looked at Marcus. She's done this before? Possibly. How many people? Marcus sighed. We don't know yet. A chill crawled down my spine. Patricia wasn't just a cruel mother-in-law. She was a real predator. Marcus opened another photograph. This man's name was Robert Kane, businessman from New Jersey. Died after falling from his yacht in 2008. I frowned. What does that have to do with Patricia? She dated him for 2 years before he died. The blood inside me froze. Marcus slid over another file. A woman named Evelyn Moore died from an overdose in 2013. I stared at him. Don't tell me she was Ethan's aunt. She left her entire estate to Patricia shortly before her death. I sat motionless. Jesus Christ. I had lived with a family of monsters for 6 years without realizing it. The police never suspected anything? Marcus gave a bitter smile. Wealthy white families in Connecticut usually don't attract much suspicion. I turned away, suddenly nauseous. Right then, my phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. I know you're innocent. My heart slammed against my ribs. Marcus immediately took the phone from me and kept reading. A second message appeared almost instantly. Patricia has done this before. Marcus looked at me. Don't respond yet. Then a third message arrived. I'm Allison's sister. The entire room went silent. I nearly snatched the phone back. "I want to meet you." Marcus immediately shook his head. "It could be a trap." "I don't think so. Claire, I need to know." 2 hours later, we met her at a small cafe outside Hartford. Her name was Julia Bennett. She looked about 28, pale blonde hair, eyes red from exhaustion. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "I thought I was crazy for 7 years." I sat across from her, my heart pounding. Julia explained that before Allison died, her sister had wanted to leave Ethan. "She was scared of him," Julia whispered shakily, but nobody believed her. I swallowed hard. "What exactly did Allison say?" Julia opened her phone and showed me an old email. It had been sent 3 days before Allison died. "If anything happens to me, don't trust Ethan." The air vanished from my lungs. Julia started crying harder. "After my sister died, Patricia came to the funeral and hugged my mother like she was grieving too." Julia clenched her jaw. "That monster even sent flowers every year." I looked at Julia and saw myself from a few months earlier. Someone so deeply gaslit, she no longer trusted her own instincts. Marcus asked quietly, "Do you have anything else?" Julia hesitated for a moment before pulling a USB drive from her purse. "I'm not sure what this means, but I think Allison recorded something." Marcus immediately plugged the USB into his laptop. There was only one audio file. Static crackled for Allison's voice filled the room. "I don't even know if I'm paranoid anymore." Goosebumps exploded across my skin. Her voice sounded exactly like mine had weeks earlier. "Patricia keeps looking at me like she hates me. Ethan's been acting strange lately too. I heard them arguing about money last night." A loud noise interrupted the recording. Then Allison's voice became frightened. "Shit, Ethan's home. If anything happens..." The file ended abruptly. I sat frozen. Marcus replayed the ending several times. At the very end of the audio, there was another voice. Very faint. A woman's voice. She heard us. Patricia. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Julia wiped away tears. "After Allison died, I gave this recording to the police. They said it wasn't enough evidence." Of course it wasn't. Nobody wanted to believe the Walker family were monsters. But things were different now. Now there was me, Marcus, Daniel, the financial records, the messages, the video of Victor, and motive. For the first time in weeks, I started to feel something close to hope. Then Marcus's phone rang. He answered for a few seconds before his face went pale. "We need to leave, right now." "Why?" "The police just issued an emergency psychiatric hold for you." My blood turned to ice. "What?" "Ethan told them you're suffering from dangerous paranoia and carrying weapons." I shot to my feet. "He's lying!" "I know." Marcus glanced toward the cafe windows. 2 police cruisers had just stopped across the street. "Right now," he said quietly. "They believe him." Real panic finally hit me. "If they take me, they'll isolate you, and Ethan controls the entire narrative." Julia whispered, horrified. "Oh my God." Marcus turned toward me. "Claire, listen carefully. We only have one option left." "I'm listening." He looked directly into my eyes. "We make Ethan confess." At that exact moment, my phone vibrated. A text from Ethan. "You're in Hartford, aren't you?" My heart nearly stopped. Then another message appeared immediately after. "I can see you." I spun around and looked through the cafe window. Rain drizzled across the street. Pedestrians hurried beneath blurry yellow streetlights reflecting on wet pavement. The 2 police cruisers were still parked across the road, but Ethan was nowhere in sight. My heartbeat slammed painfully against my ribs. "I don't see him," I whispered. Marcus stood immediately. "Back exit, now." Julia grabbed her purse with shaking hands and followed us. I had barely taken a few steps when my phone vibrated again. "Ethan, did you really think you could keep running forever?" I could barely breathe. We moved through the cafe kitchen and out into the rear alley. Marcus led me toward a black SUV parked beside a dumpster at the far end. "Get in." The moment I opened the car door, a man's voice echoed behind us. "Claire?" I turned around. Ethan stood at the mouth of the alley. No coat, no umbrella. Rain soaked his hair and clothes. His face was terrifyingly calm. Julia immediately stepped behind me. Marcus moved in front of us. "Don't come any closer." Ethan looked at Marcus like he was an insect. "You're destroying my marriage. I think you did that yourself." Ethan let out a soft laugh before turning to me. "Claire, come home." His voice sounded gentle, almost pleading. A few months ago, I might have believed him. "You lied to the police. Because you're not well." Ethan slowly stepped closer. "These people poisoned your mind and convinced you I want to hurt you." I laughed angrily. "I saw the Tahoe file on your laptop." For the first time, Ethan's expression faltered, just slightly, but I saw it. I saw the messages about Allison. Silence. The rain grew heavier. Ethan stared at me for a long moment before sighing. "You shouldn't have looked at those things." The sentence was so cold it made my skin crawl. Not denial, not surprise. More like an adult scolding a child for opening the wrong drawer. Marcus discreetly pulled out his phone and started recording. "Why did you do it?" I asked. Ethan looked directly at me, and for the first time since our wedding day, the mask completely disappeared. "Because you had everything, and I had nothing." I froze. "Do you know what it's like living under my mother's shadow?" He laughed bitterly. "Everything in my life had to be perfect. Perfect schools, perfect career, perfect marriage." He stepped closer. "Then you showed up with millions of dollars and those pathetic, sad eyes." Ethan shook his head like he was remembering something amusing. "You were unbelievably easy, Claire." I felt my heart finally shatter for good. 6 years. 6 years loving a monster. Julia's voice trembled behind me. "You bastard." Only then did Ethan notice her, and his expression changed instantly. "Oh," he smiled faintly. "Allison's family." Julia nearly lunged at him, but Marcus held her back. "You killed my sister, didn't you?" she screamed. Ethan stayed silent for several seconds before smirking. "She should have stayed quiet." The entire alley froze. I looked at Marcus. He had recorded everything. But then Ethan did something that made my blood run cold. He laughed. "You really think the police will believe this recording?" Ethan tilted his head. "A paranoid woman, a grieving sister, and an obsessed ex-FBI agent?" He wasn't afraid, because he thought he would escape like always. And maybe he was right, until another voice suddenly echoed from the end of the alley. "What about me?" Everyone turned. Patricia stood beneath the rain. I had never seen her like this before. No perfect makeup, no immaculate hair, no elegant socialite appearance, just an older woman with eyes as cold as ice. Ethan frowned. "Mom?" Patricia looked directly at me before speaking slowly. "Claire, you were always too weak to survive in this family." Marcus tightened his grip on the phone. Patricia kept walking toward us. "But Ethan," she turned toward her son, "you've started becoming careless." I looked between them and realized something felt wrong. The atmosphere had changed. Then Ethan spoke quietly. "You were following me?" Patricia smiled. "After everything I taught you, did you really think I'd let you ruin everything?" A chill spread through my body. She hadn't come to save Ethan. She came to control him. And then the first real twist hit. Patricia looked at me and sighed tiredly. "Allison actually was an accident." Julia screamed, "You're lying!" "No," Patricia interrupted. "Ethan damaged her brakes because he wanted the insurance money, but he never intended to kill Allison." She looked at her son with icy disappointment. "He only meant to scare her." I turned toward Ethan. For the first time, his face went pale. "Mom." "But Allison really died," Patricia shrugged. "And after that, I realized you were too weak to handle things yourself." Nobody spoke. The rain hammered down so heavily we could barely hear each other breathing. Then Patricia looked directly at me. "Claire, you think Ethan is dangerous?" She laughed softly. "No, darling. I'm the one who kept everything clean all these years." My stomach twisted violently. Marcus slowly moved one hand toward the gun at his waist. Patricia noticed and smiled. "You don't want to do that, Agent Reed." Marcus froze. I looked at him. "You know her?" Patricia gave a soft laugh. "We met a long time ago." A brand new fear rose inside me. No, impossible. Marcus stared at Patricia with intense tension in his eyes. Then he said the sentence that shattered my world all over again. "I thought you stopped after Chicago." I turned sharply toward him. "You know her?" Nobody answered. Patricia smiled, and for the first time I understood the most horrifying truth of all. Marcus Reed wasn't just investigating Patricia Walker. He had been hunting her for years. Rain slammed against the pavement in violent sheets. I stood frozen in that cold alley, staring at Marcus and Patricia like two people who had just ripped away the final curtain from a horrifying play. "You knew her before this?" My voice barely came out. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Patricia laughed softly. "Oh, Claire, did you really think all of this started with you?" My knees nearly gave out. Marcus kept his eyes locked on Patricia. "You're exactly the same as before." "And you're older," Patricia tilted her head, "but still unsuccessful." Julia stood beside me, trembling violently. "Can somebody explain what the hell is happening?" Marcus finally spoke. 12 years ago, the FBI investigated a series of deaths connected to insurance payouts and inheritance cases across Illinois, New York, and Connecticut. He never looked away from Patricia. Patricia Walker's name appeared in 3 of them. The blood inside me turned to ice. But there was never enough evidence, Marcus continued. Witnesses disappeared. Files disappeared. Everything always ended as an accident. Patricia smiled proudly, almost flattered. I warned them not to waste their time. I looked at her and no longer felt like I was looking at a human being. Ethan started growing impatient. Mom, we need to go. Patricia turned toward him very slowly, and for the first time, I saw Ethan afraid of his own mother. Go where? Patricia asked calmly. You just confessed in front of them. Patricia laughed. Oh, Ethan. She stepped closer to him. Do you really think I'd let anyone record me? That was when I saw the flash of silver in her hand, a small handgun. Marcus immediately pulled his weapon too. Julia screamed. I stood frozen. But Patricia wasn't pointing the gun at us. She was aiming it at Ethan. The entire alley seemed to freeze. Mom. Ethan stepped backward. Patricia looked at him with complete emotional emptiness. You made everything messy. Are you insane? No. Patricia tilted her head slightly. I'm fixing a mistake. And suddenly I understood. And somehow, that realization was even more terrifying than everything before. Patricia intended to blame everything on Ethan. Everything. Allison, Victor, me. She would become the grieving mother manipulated by her sociopathic son. Oh my God. Ethan realized it at the exact same moment. You can't do this to me. Patricia smiled faintly. Do you think I kept you around all these years because of maternal love? Ethan went pale. Then she said the sentence that shattered my world all over again. You're not even my biological son. Absolute silence. I could hear rain hammering against the metal dumpster behind us. Ethan stood completely still, like he'd just been shot through the chest. What? Patricia sighed like she was exhausted from explaining something obvious. I adopted you when you were young. The records were altered years ago, she shrugged. You were always useful, easy to control, desperate to be loved. I looked at Ethan. For the first time in my life, I saw him completely broken. All the coldness disappeared. What remained was a terrified child. You're lying. No, Patricia smiled coldly. You're more like Claire than you realize. Goosebumps spread across my skin. Patricia continued. You were both lonely children who only wanted someone to love you. Ethan started shaking. All these years, you were just a tool. I had never seen eyes shatter the way Ethan's shattered in that moment. And right then, I understood another sickening truth. Patricia loved nobody. Not Ethan. Not me. Not anyone. The only person Patricia Walker had ever loved was herself. Then everything exploded. Ethan suddenly lunged at her. A gunshot crapped through the alley. Julia screamed. I dropped instinctively toward the ground. Patricia missed the first shot. Ethan slammed into her hard enough to knock the gun onto the pavement. Marcus rushed forward. The 2 men struggled violently in the rain. Patricia stumbled backward several steps before screaming for the first time I had ever heard. Shoot him! But nobody listened to her anymore. Ethan looked completely insane now. He punched Marcus and grabbed the gun from the ground. I thought I was about to die. He spun toward me. That look in his eyes. There was nothing human left inside them anymore. Claire, he gasped. You ruined everything. I stepped backward. Ethan, I really did love you. Rainwater mixed with tears on his face. And the most horrifying part was, a small piece of me believed him. In the most twisted, sick way possible. He really had loved me. Just not enough to stop wanting my money, too. Marcus shouted, Drop the gun! Ethan ignored him. He stared at me like a drowning man staring at the last thing keeping him afloat. Then Patricia spoke coldly from behind him. He won't shoot. He's always been weak. Ethan turned slowly toward her. The 2 of them, not mother and son, but accomplices, stood in the rain like wounded animals. Then Ethan started laughing, a completely broken, unhinged laugh. You think you won? For the first time, Patricia frowned. Ethan raised the gun, not toward me, toward Patricia. I know all your secrets. Patricia went silent. I kept copies of everything. Ethan laughed shakily. Accounts, records, names of the people you killed. My blood turned to ice. Patricia slowly stepped toward him. Ethan, if I go to hell, his voice cracked, you're coming with me. I looked at both of them and realized the most terrifying thing about monsters. Eventually, they always turn on each other. In the distance, police sirens echoed, more than before. Someone had called for backup. Marcus slowly stood up, blood running from the corner of his mouth. "Ethan, end this." But Ethan didn't look at him. He only stared at Patricia, the woman who had raised him into a monster and was now ready to throw him away to save herself. Then Ethan said the final thing nobody expected. "Claire wasn't Mom's first target." I felt my heart stop. Ethan gave a crooked smile. "She wanted the Donovan fortune 20 years ago." I looked at Patricia. For the first time, her face truly changed. A flash of fear. Tiny, but real. And instantly, I understood what that meant. My parents. The car accident when I was 10 years old. No. Impossible. Impossible. I couldn't hear the rain anymore. Every sound around me seemed to vanish from the world the moment Ethan mentioned my parents. "What do you mean?" My voice cracked apart. Ethan still aimed the gun at Patricia, but his eyes were on me. A twisted smile spread across his lips, like he had finally realized he possessed the one thing that could truly frighten Patricia. "She never told you, Claire?" "Shut up," Patricia said quietly. For the first time since I had known her, I heard real fear in her voice. Ethan laughed harder. "Oh, now you want silence?" He shook his head. "After all these years?" I stared directly at Patricia. "What do my parents have to do with you?" Patricia didn't answer. Marcus stood completely still now, too. I could see him looking at Patricia like the final piece of a puzzle had finally locked into place. Then Ethan spoke slowly, one word at a time. "Your mother didn't die in an accident." My entire body went cold. Julia covered her mouth with both hands. I shook my head over and over. "No." "They were planning to change the will," Ethan laughed shakily, and Patricia didn't like that. "Shut up!" Patricia screamed. Her voice echoed violently through the alley, but it was too late now. I looked at her, and suddenly, countless tiny memories came flooding back. The times Patricia asked too many questions about my grandfather, the times she somehow knew details about the Donovan family I had never shared, the strange way she used to stare at my grandfather's old house. Oh my God, no. I stepped backward like the ground had disappeared beneath me. "You knew my parents?" Patricia exhaled slowly. Then she did the most horrifying thing imaginable. She became calm again. The mask returned. Of course I knew them. Patricia adjusted her sleeve as though she were attending afternoon tea. "Your mother used to be my friend." I nearly collapsed. "You were my mother's friend?" "Very close," Patricia smiled faintly, "until she married the man who was supposed to belong to me." The air froze solid. Marcus cursed under his breath. I stared at Patricia without blinking. "You mean my father?" Patricia didn't answer immediately, but her eyes told me everything. A wave of nausea surged violently into my throat. "All of this," I whispered, "started because you were jealous?" Patricia laughed softly. "You think money is the only motive people have?" She slowly walked toward me. "Your mother had everything. The man I loved, the perfect life, the perfect family." Her smile slowly twisted, and I was always the one standing outside watching. Goosebumps spread across my skin. This wasn't greed anymore. This was obsession stretched across decades. Patricia continued calmly. Then the accident happened. She shrugged lightly as if discussing the weather. "Your grandfather was too devastated to see the truth." "The accident," my lips trembled. "What did you do?" Patricia stayed silent for several seconds. Then she smiled. "Brake lines can fail so easily sometimes." I don't remember when I started screaming. I only remember the pain ripping through my chest. My mother, my father. All those years I cried, believing it was an accident. Patricia killed them. Marcus stepped between us the moment I lunged toward her. "Claire!" I screamed like I had lost my mind. "You killed them!" Patricia looked at me with fake sympathy. "You were so little, you wouldn't have remembered anyway." I had never hated anyone the way I hated her in that moment. Not ordinary anger, something primal, something ancient and violent enough to make me want to tear her apart with my bare hands. Ethan stood motionless beneath the rain, the gun in his hand slowly lowered. He stared at Patricia like she was a complete stranger. "You never told me that." Patricia turned toward him, her eyes icy again. "You didn't need to know. I helped you kill people all these years, and you did very well." I looked at Ethan. For the first time, I saw him understand what manipulation truly felt like, what it felt like to realize your entire life had been spent as someone else's tool. But I couldn't pity him. Not after Allison. Not after what he planned to do to me. The police sirens grew louder in the distance. Patricia heard them, and instantly she changed again. I watched that monster calculate in real time. Only a few seconds. Her eyes flicked across me, Marcus, Ethan, the SUV, the alley exit. Then she lunged toward the gun lying on the ground so quickly none of us reacted in time. Bang! The gunshot exploded through the alley. Marcus tackled me down. Julia screamed. I looked up immediately. Ethan stood frozen. Blood slowly spread across his shirt. Patricia had just shot her own son. No, her adopted son. Ethan looked down at the wound before laughing weakly. Of course. Patricia stepped backward, still aiming the gun at him. You know too much. Blood ran down Ethan's arm, mixing with rainwater. Then he looked at me. That look would haunt me forever. No manipulation, no coldness, just a broken human being. Claire, his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I stood frozen. Part of me wanted to scream that it was too late, but no words came out. Patricia slowly backed away toward the end of the alley. The police sirens were very close now. Marcus shouted, "Drop the gun!" Patricia smiled coldly. You've chased me for 12 years, Marcus. She tilted her head slightly. And you still don't understand? Marcus tightened his grip on his weapon. Patricia smiled one last time. People like me always win. Then she turned and disappeared into the rain. Marcus immediately ran after her. Footsteps echoed through the alley. I dropped beside Ethan. His blood covered my hands. Don't die. I didn't even understand why I said it. Maybe because I couldn't handle another corpse. Ethan looked at me, rainwater mixing with tears. I was going to stop. I didn't answer. But she always knew exactly what to say. He laughed painfully. She told me you'd leave me someday too, just like Allison. I closed my eyes for a moment. That was the most terrifying thing about Patricia. She didn't just kill people. She created monsters. Ethan coughed violently and grabbed my wrist. In the safe at the house, he gasped. There's a hard drive. I leaned closer. What hard drive? Everything. His eyes were beginning to blur. Names, accounts, videos. My heart pounded violently. Evidence. Real evidence at last. But then another gunshot echoed from the far end of the alley. Marcus. Or Patricia. I snapped my head upward. And right then, Ethan whispered the final sentence that turned my blood completely cold. Claire, your mother didn't die right away that day. I turned back toward him. What? Ethan struggled to breathe. Patricia found her after the crash. The world shattered around me all over again. What are you talking about? Ethan looked at me with bloodshot eyes full of regret. She begged Patricia to save you. I couldn't breathe anymore, and then Ethan spoke the final words before losing consciousness. Patricia let her die. I don't remember when the ambulances arrived. Everything after Ethan's final words became shattered fragments in my mind. Red and blue lights flashing through the rain, people shouting names, static crackling through police radios, blood on my hands. So much blood. I sat frozen on the pavement while paramedics lifted Ethan onto a stretcher. He was still alive, but he had lost a terrifying amount of blood. A police officer tried asking me questions, but I barely heard him. All I could see was my mother, trapped inside a crushed car, alive, in pain, begging Patricia to save me, and Patricia standing there, watching her die. I started vomiting right there on the wet asphalt. Julia held me as my legs nearly gave out beneath me. Marcus returned about 10 minutes later, alone. I looked at him and knew immediately. She got away, didn't she? Marcus didn't answer right away. He removed his glasses, wiped rainwater from his face, and finally said quietly, "She shot at me and disappeared near the train station." I noticed the blood soaking through his shoulder. "You're hurt?" Not badly, but it was his expression that terrified me. Marcus Reed had hunted Patricia for over 10 years, and she had escaped again. The next 3 days turned into a media nightmare. The story exploded across Connecticut. Prominent businesswoman Claire Donovan accuses husband of murder plot. Walker family linked to multiple suspicious deaths? $1 million inheritance scandal unfolds. Reporters swarmed the hospital where Ethan was recovering. Patricia vanished completely. Police issued a nationwide warrant. And me? I barely recognized myself in the mirror anymore. Dark circles under my eyes, hands constantly shaking, jumping at every sound. But strangely, I wasn't afraid anymore. After learning the truth about my parents, something inside me had died permanently. I wanted Patricia Walker to pay, no matter how long it took. 2 days later, Ethan woke up. Marcus didn't want me to see him, but I went to the hospital anyway. I needed to hear everything from him directly. The hospital room was sterile and freezing cold. Machines beeped steadily beside his bed. Ethan looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. The moment he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Claire. I stayed several feet away from the bed. I didn't move closer. I didn't touch him. I want the truth. Ethan closed his eyes for a few seconds. I know. All of it. He let out a weak laugh. You were always like this. He looked at me, always needing to know everything. Why did you marry me? Silence stretched between us. Finally, Ethan spoke. At first, because of my mother. Even though I expected it, the words still hurt. She told me to get close to you. She said your grandfather was old and eventually all the Donovan money would belong to you. He gave a bitter smile. I thought it was just a normal gold digger scheme. And then I actually fell in love with you. I didn't react. I didn't even know how anymore. But after Allison died, Ethan swallowed painfully. Everything changed. I stared at him. You killed her. Tears spilled down his face. I just wanted to scare her so she wouldn't leave me. You cut her brake lines. I didn't think she'd die. I laughed in disgust. Typical Ethan, always a reason, always an excuse. After Allison died, my mother helped cover everything up, Ethan said, staring at the ceiling. And from that moment on, I owed her. Owed her by helping her kill people? He stayed silent. That was answer enough. For the first time, I stepped a little closer to the bed. What about my parents? Ethan's face tightened painfully. I don't know everything. I only know my mother was obsessed with your father. He took a strained breath. After they died, she kept watching you for years. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? She wanted to make sure you stayed the sole Donovan heir. My knees nearly buckled. Patricia had been watching me since I was a child. Dear God. Ethan continued in a near whisper. When I met you the first time, it wasn't an accident. I closed my eyes. I knew it. I had always believed our meeting at that Boston gallery was fate. It had just been part of the plan. Is there anything she's afraid of? I asked. Ethan looked at me for several long seconds before giving a weak smile. Yes. I'm listening. Being forgotten. I frowned. She always said the worst thing isn't dying. He looked at me carefully. It's disappearing like you never existed. Before I could process that, Marcus entered the room. His expression was strange. We have a problem. My chest tightened again. Marcus handed me his phone. On the screen was a security camera image from JFK Airport, taken about an hour earlier. Patricia Walker, wearing a black hat and sunglasses. But the thing that turned my blood cold was the woman walking beside her, a red-haired woman in her 50s. I had never seen her before. Marcus spoke slowly. We just confirmed this woman's identity. Who is she? Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Then he said the words that froze my entire body. Her name is Evelyn Donovan. My heart nearly stopped. Donovan, my last name. That's impossible. Marcus nodded slowly. She's your mother's biological sister. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My aunt, the woman I had been told died of cancer when I was a little girl, but there she was beside Patricia Walker, alive, helping her escape. I felt like my entire life had never been real. Ethan looked at the photo and let out a broken laugh. Of course. I turned toward him. You knew her? Ethan closed his eyes. Claire, he whispered. There's something I never told you. I wasn't sure my heart could survive another secret. What? Ethan looked directly into my eyes. Patricia wasn't the only one who wanted the Donovan fortune. The air in the room turned ice cold. Then he revealed a twist that shattered me completely. Your aunt was the one who planned it first. I looked at Ethan and felt absolutely nothing anymore. Not shock, not anger, not even grief, just emptiness. Because by that point, everything in my life could have been fake. Family, love, accidents, childhood memories. It all felt like a rotting house finally collapsing in on itself. Say that again. My voice sounded raw and broken. Ethan lay still for a few seconds, struggling to breathe. Your aunt, Evelyn. He swallowed painfully. She and Patricia knew each other before your parents died. Marcus slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. I recognized that look in his eyes. Even he hadn't known this. Ethan continued. Your mother and Evelyn hated each other since childhood. Evelyn always believed your grandfather favored his older daughter. He gave a weak laugh. When your mother married your father and became the primary heir, Evelyn snapped. I barely remembered Aunt Evelyn. Just a few old family photographs. A red-haired woman always standing near the edge of the frame. Quiet, rarely smiling. Then one day she had supposedly died of cancer. At least that was the story I'd been told. Why did my grandfather never mention her? I asked. Because after the accident, Ethan looked at me. Your grandfather believed Evelyn died too. My heart skipped violently. What do you mean? There were originally 3 people in the car that day. The entire hospital room fell silent. Marcus asked carefully, Evelyn was in the car too? Ethan nodded, but she got out before it happened. Goosebumps exploded across my skin. No, that couldn't be true. She knew it was going to happen. Yes. I shot to my feet, dizzy with horror. My own aunt helped murder my parents, then faked her death for 20 years. I started laughing, a fractured, hysterical sound that barely sounded human. Marcus stood immediately. Claire, I'm fine. I wiped my face only to realize I'd been crying. No, actually, I'm completely losing my mind. Ethan looked at me with overwhelming guilt. Why tell me now? Because my mother is going to kill her next. I froze. What? Patricia never keeps accomplices around forever. Ethan closed his eyes. Victor was only the beginning. Marcus and I exchanged the same look instantly. If Evelyn was helping Patricia escape, then she was in danger too. But the thing that truly terrified me was this. Patricia knew how to make people dependent on her, then dispose of them once they stopped being useful. Like Ethan. Like Victor. Maybe even Allison. Marcus immediately stepped outside to contact the FBI and request airport financial tracking. While he was gone, I stayed alone with Ethan. The room was so quiet I could hear the steady beeping of the monitor. He stared at me for a long time before speaking. I never wanted things to become this. I laughed bitterly. You actually think that means anything anymore? I know it doesn't. I loved you so much, I thought something was wrong with me because your mother hated me. My voice shook violently. I blamed myself for years. Tears slid down Ethan's temples. I'm sorry. I shook my head slowly. The worst part isn't that you wanted to kill me. I looked directly at him. It's that there was a time I would have died for you. Ethan shut his eyes like I had stabbed him, and for the first time, I think he truly understood how completely he had destroyed me. But it was far too late. After a long silence, Ethan opened his eyes again. Claire, I'm listening. If you ever face Patricia again, his voice dropped almost to a whisper. Don't trust any emotion she shows you. I frowned. What does that mean? My mother doesn't feel things the way normal people do. He stared at the ceiling. She can cry 5 minutes after killing someone. A shiver crawled through me. Why did you stay with her? Silence stretched between us again. Then Ethan answered in the exhausted voice of a broken child. Because she was the only person who ever wanted me. That hurt in the strangest possible way. Not because I still loved him, but because finally I understood what Ethan really was. Not an evil genius, not a mastermind. Just a child raised by a monster. A child who eventually became one too. Marcus returned at that moment. We identified the flight. To where? Buenos Aires. I frowned. Argentina? Marcus nodded. Patricia has offshore accounts there dating back years. Of course she did. I almost laughed from sheer exhaustion. Marcus continued. But there's something strange. Something even stranger? Evelyn never boarded the plane. I froze. What do you mean? Security footage shows Patricia entering the boarding area alone. My blood turned ice cold. No, it couldn't happen that fast. Marcus looked directly at me. We found Evelyn's rental car about 10 miles from the airport. My heartbeat exploded. Where was she? Marcus hesitated for several seconds. Then he answered quietly. In the trunk. I closed my eyes. Of course. Patricia had cleaned up another accomplice. Cause of death? Massive sedative overdose. Marcus clenched his jaw. Exactly like a case in Chicago back in 2011. I looked up sharply. The one you mentioned before? Marcus nodded. Patricia always uses the same method on people who betray her. I stared out the hospital window at the rain. Part of me felt sick. Another part of me felt something darker. Evelyn helped murder my parents. And in the end, Patricia murdered her too. Monsters devouring each other. But then Marcus said something that froze me all over again. Claire, there's one more thing. I'm really starting to hate that sentence. Marcus didn't smile. Before Evelyn died, she made a phone call. I'm guessing it wasn't to order pizza? No. He stared at me carefully. She called your grandfather. My blood turned to ice. What? The call lasted exactly 13 seconds. My mind started spinning. But my grandfather is dead. Marcus stayed silent. Then he slowly placed his phone in front of me. On the screen was a bank account activity report from 2 days earlier. Account holder, Henry Donovan. My grandfather. The man we buried 3 months ago. I stared at the phone screen until my eyes hurt. Henry Donovan. My grandfather's name, his bank account number, and the most recent transaction had happened 2 days ago at a private bank in Manhattan. I looked up at Marcus like he had just told me the dead could come back to life. That's impossible. Marcus slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. That's what we thought too. I buried him myself. The coffin was closed. My heart skipped a beat. Right. At the funeral, they never opened the casket because they said the stroke had severely disfigured his face. I had never questioned it. Jesus Christ! I started struggling to breathe. Marcus lowered his voice. Claire, there's a chance your grandfather never died. The whole world warped around me. Ethan let out a weak, bitter laugh from the hospital bed. I told you, he closed his eyes. The Donovan family is even more messed up than my mother. I whipped around toward him. You knew about this? Not everything. He breathed heavily. I just knew Patricia was terrified of your grandfather. A chill ran down my spine. Patricia Walker, the woman who terrified everyone, was afraid of my grandfather. What the hell did that mean? Marcus stood up. We need to go to Manhattan. 3 hours later, I sat in the back of an SUV, speeding through the rain toward New York with Marcus and 2 federal agents. I barely spoke the entire drive. There was only one question repeating in my head. If my grandfather was alive, why did he let all of this happen? The private bank was inside an old stone building on Lexington Avenue. By the time we arrived, it was almost dark. Marcus showed his FBI badge. The bank manager immediately went pale when he heard the name Henry Donovan. Was Mr. Donovan here today? The manager hesitated for a few seconds before nodding. He has a private room upstairs. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The elevator ride felt endless. I thought I was going insane. The doors opened. A long hallway covered in red carpet stretched in front of us. At the very end stood a black wooden door. Marcus looked at me. You sure about this? No, I wasn't sure about anything anymore, but I still walked forward. I opened the door, and the world stopped. My grandfather was sitting by the window. Alive. Actually alive. He wore the same gray suit he always loved, his silver hair perfectly combed, a cup of tea resting in his hand like it was just another ordinary afternoon. I couldn't breathe. The teacup paused slightly when he saw me. Then he sighed. You got here sooner than I expected. I broke down crying instantly. Grandpa. He slowly stood up, older than I remembered, more exhausted, but still him. Why? My voice cracked. Why would you do this? Marcus stood behind me, visibly tense, but my grandfather only looked at me with unbearable sadness in his eyes. Because I had no other choice. You faked your death? Yes. Why? I screamed for the first time since all of this started. He closed his eyes for a moment. When I found out Patricia had returned. Ice spread through my veins. Returned? He looked at me for a very long time before speaking. Patricia used to be my lover. The room went silent. I thought my legs were going to give out. No, no more. There couldn't possibly be another twist. But my grandfather continued anyway. Before your mother was born, Patricia and I were together for years. He stared down at his trembling hands. Then I chose your grandmother. I could barely hear anymore. Patricia never forgave me. Marcus slowly asked, So you knew she was killing people? My grandfather stayed silent for too long, far too long. Then he quietly answered, I suspected. I stared at him in disbelief. You suspected? I laughed through tears. She murdered my parents. I didn't know for certain until it was too late. Then why didn't you go to the police? Because I had no proof. He looked at me helplessly, and Patricia always knew how to make things disappear. I took several steps back. Part of me wanted to hug him. Another part wanted to destroy the entire room. And the fake death? My grandfather slowly sat back down like he had aged 10 years in minutes. 3 months ago, I received photographs of you. I frowned. What photographs? He pulled an envelope from the desk drawer. Inside was a picture of me sleeping in my bedroom. My blood turned cold. Someone had taken photos of me while I slept. On the back, written in black ink, were the words, She'll die just like her mother. I nearly dropped the photo. My grandfather continued. I knew Patricia was preparing to make her move. His voice cracked, so I faked my death to lure her out. I stared at him in horror. You used me as bait. Tears filled his eyes. I had Marcus watching over you the entire time. I turned sharply toward Marcus. He said nothing. And suddenly, I understood. Marcus hadn't appeared in my life by coincidence. My grandfather had hired him long before any of this began. Everyone knew, I whispered. Everyone except me.
Claire, I almost died! My scream echoed through the room. My grandfather started crying. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry. I'm sorry, but it was too late. Too late for my parents, for Allison, for everyone. Suddenly, Marcus's phone rang. He answered it, and his expression immediately changed. Patricia just surfaced at the Brooklyn docks. The entire room froze. Marcus looked at me. The FBI is surrounding the area. But I already knew. Patricia Walker was never the kind of person who got arrested peacefully. We reached Brooklyn about 20 minutes later. The harbor was covered in fog and flashing police lights. Helicopters thundered overhead. And at the end of the pier, Patricia Walker stood alone, wearing a long black coat, her hair blowing in the ocean wind. She looked like a ghost. When she saw me step out of the car, she smiled softly. Finally, Claire. I started walking toward her. Marcus tried to stop me, but I shoved his hand away. I wanted to face her myself. Why? I asked. Patricia tilted her head. You'll need to be more specific. Why did you kill my parents? She stayed silent for a few seconds. Then she smiled. Your mother won everything. Her voice was almost gentle. I just wanted to see her lose once. I stared at her. So many deaths, so many ruined lives, so many years, all because of jealousy and obsession. It was meaningless. And Ethan? I asked. Patricia shrugged. A lonely child is very easy to turn into a weapon. Disgust crawled through every inch of my body. Police sirens echoed across the harbor. Marcus shouted, Patricia Walker, drop the weapon! That was when I finally noticed the gun in her hand. Patricia looked at me one last time and smiled. You know the funniest part, Claire? I said nothing. After everything, she laughed softly. You're still the one most like me. Then she raised the gun to her own head. Bang. The gunshot echoed across the black water. I stood frozen as Patricia Walker's body fell into the ocean below. No tears, no final confession, no remorse. Just silence. 3 months later, Ethan pleaded guilty to Allison's death and the conspiracy to murder me in exchange for life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. He sent me a letter from prison, but I never opened it. My grandfather dissolved most of Donovan Holdings and disappeared to Italy to live anonymously. I never forgave him. Maybe I never will. Marcus retired a few months after the case. Before leaving Connecticut, he told me something I still think about to this day. The most dangerous thing about monsters is that sometimes they look exactly like the people you love. I sold the old house, changed my phone number, disappeared from Connecticut. Sometimes I still dream about Patricia standing at the end of a hallway, smiling at me. But then I wake up and remember she's dead. At least, I hope she is.